This podcast is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
Thank you all for tuning in to this series of talks. We hope to have more talks and have this be the beginning of a whole bunch of things from the College of Public Preceptors. I'm very grateful to everyone who's organized it and to the tech support. We've got some absolute pros here, Akasa Jyoti and Chandradasa and Ratnavyuha. It's really very supportive to me that you're all here holding up the back end of things. And I really kind of like the idea that I'm sitting in my the corner of my dining room in Maine in the United States, and I'm kind of reaching out to all of you, and we're all in our, presumably, most of us are in our homes. I like that. And the perfection of Samadhi. There's no way I can do justice to this topic. It is vast. I have been engaged with meditation for, I did the arithmetic, over 50 years, but whatever I say is just a drop in the bucket, I assure you. So bear that in mind as multiple questions and things pop into your heads. First, I'm going to talk about Samadhi as part of the set of perfections, the Paramitas. And then my main point is to try to convey how we might think of meditation and Samadhi as something accessible and very natural. That when explored to the fullest extent, enlightens our whole experience. But the beginnings of it are very accessible. So, the fifth perfection of a bodhisattva, Samadhi, usually referring to the practice of meditation. And my question to you is, when you hear Samadhi, what comes to mind? You can just think that to yourself. Does it imply to you something close by, easy, no problem? Or does it convey to you something remote, unattainable, and rarefied? I think for most of it, it's probably the latter. And the word does refer to something rarefied, something extraordinary. But it is attainable, and probably more attainable if we don't think of it as remote. So that's my first suggestion. Don't think about Samadhi as being remote. Think of it as approachable. Basically, Samadhi is the process by which we can use our mind to know itself and to know reality. In the Buddhist tradition, it's a hugely important part of the path, using the power of the mind to overcome suffering and its causes, right? That's our project. I couldn't do the talk without a little tiny reading. So here's the Dhammapada. Chapter 2, verse 24. If you meditate earnestly, pure in mind and kind in deeds, leading a disciplined life in harmony with the Dharma, you will grow in glory. If you meditate earnestly through spiritual disciplines, you can make an island for yourself that no flood can overwhelm. unfortunately, we can't go into all aspects of that, like most of the Dhammapada. I mean, no flood can overwhelm. What an evocative image. So there's a protection implied. So now to look at Samadhi as part of the constellation of the perfections. And I'm going to name these slightly out of order as they came to my mind. The perfections all support one another, of course, and they reflect back on each other, just like the elements of other sets that we know, how the steps on the Eightfold Path, kind of slide around and inform one another. Same with the perfections. So what came to mind first as I began pondering the perfection of Samadhi was how dependent it is on Shila, or ethics. Clear and skillful mind and action. There's a well-known relationship between ethics and meditation. The main thing is to have an inner foundation that is clean, unencumbered, as untangled as possible, so we can be free of hindrances. When we have a lot of difficulties or dilemmas in our life, it's difficult to concentrate. Any lack of honesty or kindness within or outward creates disturbance and friction in our mind, whether we're conscious of it or not. That will unsettle our efforts to meditate and make it very difficult. So meditation, samadhi, begins with being honest, kind, and clear. Kshanti, known as forbearance, tolerance, and receptivity or openness. Kshanti brings about stability, and stability is essential for samadhi. If Kshanti is patiently loving beings as they truly are, including ourselves, we'll have a foundation that will take us beyond irritation and discomforts. We won't be distracted by them. With Kshanti, we're able to be grounded, less tossed around by worldly winds, and, key for meditation, less bothered by all the ways that our sense of self is never satisfied. So this stability, groundedness, and metta of Kshanti should help us spend less time being self-obsessed in our meditation. All of this is pointing to key factors in samadhi. Dana Paramita. I think the connection here is more metaphorical, perhaps. The essence of dana is open-handedness. So what came to mind for me is the quality of non-grasping that is part of dana and needs to be part of our meditation. No object needs to be held on to. Whatever is arising, let it go on its own. Getting familiar, but through Dana Paramita and other ways, we get familiar with that process, letting things go on their own, non-grasping. There's no need for us to hang on to a thought, even whether it's bliss or whether it's fear or a brilliant idea. No need to hold on to it. So the image that came to my mind was the a traditional meditation mudra where the hands are in the lap, palm upward, one hand setting on top of the other. Imagine if the thought arising is an insect landing in the palm, perhaps a butterfly, or maybe it's a really weird, creepy kind of insect. The hands don't close on it. They stay palm upward and open. So the insect can fly or crawl away anytime. So I think of the powers of dana and samadhi as both being anti-grasping. Virya, energy with skillful direction and open to the good. In meditation, virya is the sense of aliveness that we bring to our practice. And in meditation, we especially need skill in the subtle energy ranges. In meditation, energy won't be about sort of launching ourselves into something like a vigorous activity. It's far more subtle. It's about steadiness. And virya in meditation can be extremely delicate and very beautiful, like the quality of a very light breeze. And we feel it and maybe become aware of it in the tiny changes and adjustments that we make while we become focused, just turning away slightly from a thought and maybe the turning back ever so slightly to the sense of the body or the breath. Virya is infinitely subtle, like samadhi. It's awareness of vibration. And samadhi embodies poise. That's a word I quite like. Stillness. And there's a lot of energy in that. So, new ways to think about virya, perhaps. And finally, prajna. Traditionally, it's understood that wisdom or insight arises on the basis of samadhi, when the mind is pliable, focused, not distracted, and informed by the Dharma. So samadhi and prajna go hand in hand. And prajna is perhaps what we are all striving for. You know, we're going for insight. We want realization. Well, it is true, when the mind is deeply conditioned through samadhi, we are better able to see or experience reality, unveiled, unbiased, open. So, having sketched a mandala of the interrelated perfections, we come to samadhi on its own. I am no scholar and not a linguist, so my understanding of the term, you have to take it in that spirit. The term seems, in my understanding, has something to do with gathering or being established. And I love those two words. I think those terms give us clues, really big clues, about what to look for in our practice. Gathering and establishing. Okay, on to some more expanded definitions of samadhi. And samadhi is usually divided into levels. We love our Buddhist tradition, many, many ways of defining things. There are two broad ways that samadhi is defined. The first is usually referred to as concentration. Samadhi, concentration. Ekagata, another word that I love, one-pointedness. Sustained attention. Attention withdrawn from the senses. Unification of energies. Another dimension of this aspect of samadhi is the gradual rising of consciousness of the whole being, really, rising up and out of the physical universe through successively higher states of consciousness. One becomes more and more peaceful. The feeling of silence becomes deeper and deeper. One begins to see with inner vision. This refers to the jhanas, which you're probably familiar with, and I'll say a little bit more about approaching jhana later. You know, almost everything I've said so far, each paragraph, each line is an entire course. So we're just kind of floating through here. The other way of defining samadhi is the aspect of samadhi where it's infused with prajna. We're really talking about here the mind that experiences or knows wisdom or insight. This is spoken of meditation in the sense of contemplation of reality, of the ultimate. And experientially, this is felt. It's not just thinking. But there is something that in this kind of focused concentration that one feels, and Bhante talks about the gravitational pull of the transcendental, or the absolute, these big abstract terms. I think it's a useful term in the experience of samadhi. There is a movement towards experience of something extremely vast. There are said to be 3 gateways to liberation through samadhi. Vimoksha mukha. Although these sound esoteric and mysterious, these states really are within our reach, and we can be on the lookout to recognize them if and when they arise. They may sound like things you've already experienced in your meditation, so it's worth naming them. The first Vimoksha mukha, gateway to liberation, is the imageless. This is when we are free from thoughts or conceptualization, free from discursive thought, mind like a bright, blue, clear sky. The second gateway is the directionless, unbiased, no particular direction or preference. One remains poised like a sphere on a horizontal plane, where perfect spontaneity may arise, or perfect stillness may be held. That's the directionless. And the third gateway is voidness samadhi, or shunyata. This is being in touch with or having full realization of the nature of existence, how nothing has its own fixed nature. This last voidness samadhi is connected to some others. This list of gateways, by the way, goes on. I think there's about 8 of them. But it's the quality that we might start to recognize in our own experience and say, oh, right, okay, so this is leaning towards, voidness, maybe, is even-mindedness. And the Dharma teaching around that is the same characteristic of shunya. Everything, all dharmas are shunya. So that's something we can touch into in our practice. And finally, for this this 2-part definition of samadhi, I'm going to give us an image that reportedly originated with Weneng. I can't imagine it isn't other places as well. So this is the lamp. I think of a candle, actually, because I spent a lot more time looking at candles, so I'm really familiar with them. So there's a candle, wax candle, which is the samadhi. Even the flame is the samadhi. And its light that radiates outward is prajna. So they can't be separated. You can't have the one without the other. This is the image of how the realization samadhi is connected to prajna. The lamp is the quintessence of the light, and the light is the expression of the lamp. And I just want to indulge in one little extra thought here, which is the lamp is the quintessence of the light. So what that tells me is that that lamp is the samadhi, right? It's my meditative practice that is stilling, that is whole. And that is the quintessence of the wisdom. Anyway, that's a bit of a koan there, and it can only be felt and experienced. And I'll say something later that points to that same teaching, that same image. So, back down to earth here a little bit. Basically, the 2 parts, there's the practice that integrates, gathers, and consolidates our energy and attention. You'll notice I am avoiding the word concentration as much as possible. This kind of practice is well known as shamatha practice. And there is the kind of samadhi practice where all that refined awareness and direct experience within our consciousness starts to tell us something about reality itself. Even more simply, here is one of Sangharakshita's working definitions of samadhi. From Living with Awareness, Buddhist meditation is a clearing of the decks for action, a transforming of unskillful and unexamined mental states into integrated and refined energy for a purpose beyond self-absorption. Clear the decks, transform mental states into integrated and refined energy for a purpose beyond self-absorption. So many pointers there. So what I like about that definition is it sort of speaks to wherever we might be at. We might be just getting in touch with previously unexamined mental states. You know that phenomenon when you maybe remember it, when you start to meditate, it's almost as though things get worse because you're becoming aware of what has been hiding in the back of your mind. So maybe that's where we're at. Maybe we're getting more familiar with the feelings that are integrated and getting more subtle. And maybe we're kind of out there in spaces where our sense of self doesn't even apply. But the important thing is to practice wherever we're at, according to what is really in front of us. And to trust that development of subtler states will arise when we're ready. The process is a natural one. There's no need to push ourselves or block parts of ourselves in an effort to get to the idealized state of samadhi. No gritting of the teeth, please. So, when does meditation become samadhi? Good question. At its most sublime and rarefied, samadhi is indescribable. Thus, the many discussions over 2,500 years about what it means. But as a process, a direction, or an intention, we can enter in our own way by working with some very broad and accessible qualities. There are inner conditions to cultivate and outer conditions we can establish to support an approach to samadhi. Consider, you probably have had a feeling for the mind when it's very, very smooth and one thought threads through to the next. When there's enjoyment and a sense of wholeness in the experience. You probably had that. That kind of whole and integrated mind may come about in a number of ways, not only on the meditation cushion. It's beneficial to cultivate this kind of harmonious experience in all the ways. It all helps break obstructive and grasping habits in our minds. Earlier this week, I met a friend at a lovely botanical garden in our region. It's a young garden, started just over 30 years ago, the Central Maine Botanical Garden, for those of you wondering. Many botanical gardens are sort of built in very open spaces. This one is being carved out of a natural Maine woodland. So the backdrop to all of the cultivated spaces is this really gorgeous, deep, dark forest of mostly conifer trees, mostly pine trees that are very, very dense. It's just stunning. There are lovely trails. There's artwork and beautiful stonework everywhere. One moves through wooded pathways to open areas that are just bursting with color and flowers. The sound of moving water can be heard at regular intervals. From waterfalls to fountains to streams trickling along. There are benches and big, huge stones to sit on everywhere you might want to sit. I mean, it's really, really beautifully done. My friend and I strolled, we sat, we talked, we gazed, We wondered at sights, smells. I mean, the fragrance garden is beyond anything imaginable. And there are the sounds and there are textures everywhere. We sat in silence a lot. After some hours, my friend commented that at almost any of the spaces we experienced, we could have shifted easily into a meditative state. And in fact, I think that over the course of the day, we had slipped into meditative state. So what were the present elements that lead me to compare that beautiful afternoon with meditative states? So we felt in something quite sort of heightened, very, very calm, tranquil, content, still in that way of not being compelled to like walk over there or go see that, like just perfectly content. And very, very alert to the details all around us. Birds, insects, shadows, colors, the sound of families enjoying each other's company. The quality of my attention, and I think my friend shared the same, was such that it could easily move from one element to another while feeling continuous and coherent. And it was all extremely enjoyable. You may recognize my description as similar to some of the dhyana factors. Dhyana is sometimes a shorthand for talking about samadhi. Samadhi includes the dhyanas, as mentioned earlier. So I'm going to draw out these areas to be aware of, things that I experienced in the gardens, and we want to be alert to in our experience everywhere. 3 qualities to be aware of going into the dhyana path. The quality of thought. So there can be a couple of ways for this to manifest. There's what we classically think of to be one-pointed, to be still, to be focused, like this. But there's also a way to be having a mind kind of like this, gentle movement, but still very coherent. Yeah? So like gentle waves, things are arising, but they're not all over the place. They're moving together and very gently without disruption. So, a couple of ways thought can manifest. Either way, the mind can be unified and stable. Then there's the quality of feeling that we notice or pay attention to. Pleasant feeling, joyful. This quality is also known as sukha. And I always think of that word like sweetness, because it's, I don't know, it's like azúcar in Spanish, I guess, but it's just sweetness and enjoyment. So this is something we can find in the body. We can also find it in other subtle feeling tone. We might even enjoy the quality of thought, whether a thought is very still or whether it's that gently flowing kind of movement in the mind. So however we can contact sukha, enjoyment, lean into it, support it, bring that enjoyment to the forefront of our attention. And sometimes it's very, very simple. It's just like, oh, this is a perfect temperature right now. Doesn't have to be cosmic, right? But learning how to move into these qualities. The third quality is of our energy. And in this territory of moving on to the jhana path, our energy is alive, vibrant, and with depth, as if there's much more energy available. When the internal energy is very active, when there's a lot of movement, it's known as piti or priti, which can be fluttering or, all kinds of descriptions of priti. But I like to keep a broader definition here. The energy might not be felt only physically. There's also heart energy, feeling and mental energy. And the key is aliveness. So as we're approaching Samadhi, we do our best to embody aliveness with our posture and with our intention. Another inner condition that helps Samadhi to arise is Shraddha, or confident faith, moving slightly away from the very traditional discourse about Samadhi. But I really feel that to enter that kind of gathered up, smooth, integrated state of mind, we need faith. We need faith in the practice, the methods and meditative tools that we've learned. And all of the ones that we do in Triratna are just grand, really fantastic. Mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati, just sitting, metta bhavana, brahma viharas, working with the hindrances, all great structures for us to approach Samadhi. So we need to have confidence in them. They work. We don't need to go doubting them. Confidence in the tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, the meditative tradition. So for this, really, tons could be said, but I'm just going to suggest to imagine the Buddha seated in meditation posture. Imagine, well, we can't, but we can pretend to imagine what's in the Buddha's mind. Awareness of probably both the minute and the cosmic, all at once. Imagine meditating with the Buddha. I hope that you've all had an opportunity to do that sort of thing. Imagine he's right there with us. What an atmosphere. We also need faith in ourselves and in our own practice, confidence that our own efforts on all fronts will bear fruit. We might ask, can I do that? Can I be still? Will my mind ever be free of thoughts popping up? Yes. Samadhi, for you, with your own mind, can happen. It's this process we engage in. It's not a fixed state that we need to arrive at. Start noticing all these qualities I've been talking about, when and how you feel more together, more coherent, where your experience of the body, heart, and mind is all of a piece. Is it when you're walking mindfully? Is it in seated meditation? What kind of meditation? Is it a long, quiet afternoon in a beautiful garden? Is it through repetitive movement? One of my favorite reset things is to go outside and swing on my hammock, which is hung from a few beautiful trees. Do I feel more gathered and more established in a whole experience, watching my breath, chanting? Through whatever practice, get more familiar with the experience of stability, aliveness, and presence. Then let that experience be your meditation. And I think all those things are available to us. And don't worry if it's not in the classic way. Samadhi practice is about becoming more familiar with our whole being, mind, feeling, body. When they're in sync, right? When they, it, I, we are undisturbed. As a friend of my son says, dialed, totally dialed, on it, on the moment, on the free-falling edge point of being totally aware, but not fixed on any specific object, where maybe there is no object anymore. Where complete inward poise merges with boundlessness and the feeling that we encompass multitudes. That's what we're trying to get used to. So it means getting used to a different kind of intensity than our usual life intensity, which is based in emotion and situation and a lot of drama and a lot of me. The intensity of samadhi is profound presence with no compulsion, right? And no specific self-reference. That takes some getting used to. Samadhi means being receptive. We have to let our mind, we have to let our consciousness take us into unknown territory, where our self-centered nature is not the main topic. And it means suspending analysis or interpretation of the experience while it's happening. And because that is grasping after it, right? We don't need to think about the experience while we're having it. Samadhi is safe. It's a place or an experience that's vast and safe. So let's be receptive to it. Receptivity also means being relaxed. The samadhi way might mean even some physical adaptations. How, in this body, can I truly be alert, yet energetically open? How can I, in this body, let go of preoccupation with my own self-everything? So another little story here, my first meditation experience was in the Soto Zen tradition, where the posture is everything. Sitting is the meditation. Meditation is sitting. The body expresses the awareness we're aiming for. That's something I hope you can all bring into your practice when you do sit. Is this body expressing the awareness I'm aiming for? Again, that presence, poise, aliveness, openness. I certainly have my physical struggles, lots of them, and I find resistance to practice carried in my body in 1,000 ways. But if I recall my aim to be meditating with the Buddha, and if I turn my mind and heart energy in the same direction, it helps. And the meditation becomes less physical. Something, this thing about the body and meditation, it's very tricky. I don't know how to talk about it very well, but when you bring this attitude to the sitting of wholeness, of integration, of aliveness and alertness, something greater is embodied than me. We start to see where I'm going here. So what we're aiming at in our meditation practice when it's Samadhi is to embody something greater than ourselves. And here's where we get phrases that are hard to understand, like the body is transcended. Well, when my back is killing me, I hate that phrase. When my hip is killing me, I hate that phrase, the body is transcended. But if we get familiar with all of these qualities that I've been naming over and over and over again, if we really give ourselves to it, this ordinary experience of my body, my aches and pains, is transcended. It's a tricky one. So, I'm going to name a few other outer conditions. There's been a lot of inner conditions. Now some outer conditions that we can consider as part of our approach to Samadhi. There is the classic supportive retreat setting. Fantastic. Silence, beautiful shrine room, healthy food, plenty of time, no internet. Really, really good conditions. Make it happen. Or there's other outer conditions like the botanical garden that I mentioned, or sublime works of art that temporarily transport us out of ourselves, or a safe and beautiful place in nature where we can let ourselves be undisturbed, where our nervous system can regulate itself to its optimum resting setting. This is really important. By bringing all of these things together, inner and outer conditions, we can definitely approach Samadhi. The one-pointed intention and presence open to direct experience of expanded consciousness and reality. It's such a big definition, right? But all of our practice leads to Samadhi, serves Samadhi, supports Samadhi. Through this lens, Samadhi, and my Zen teacher would totally approve, Samadhi is the purpose of our practice. Not to be a good meditator or to become expert in the dhyanas, but to be able to see and fully experience what is happening right now, every moment. Fully experience. Reality is all around us. While it is expressed with big concepts such as conditionality, emptiness, Indra's net, the Four Noble Truths, the causes and cessations of dukkha, compassionate wisdom, the samadhi, with samadhi, we realize that we're in it all the time. There's no other places to go. This is what our training is for. Not to retreat into an altered state, although there are altered states, and we will experience them, but that's not the point. And not to live on retreat all the time. Our training is to be in the world, to be loving people, sharing life, exemplifying the Dharma, and being one embodiment of clarity and wisdom and compassion among all the myriad beings. Just keep tuning in and getting familiar with what it feels like to be integrated within, to be gathered within, to have attention, feeling, and energy all in sync, willing to be present to everything that's before us. Samadhi.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you.